How should Chirac be remembered in terms of foreign policy?
Well, Chirac was a pragmatic. We cannot say that he was an ideologist and that he has, very, how can I say that, ideological stance about what the foreign policy of Europe shall be. He was able in his career to change his view, and it was particularly true about Europe. So if we have to qualify his policy, well, it's an adaptative foreign policy to the world context.
And he had a particular relationship, didn't he, with the Arab world, particularly with some of France's former colonial countries. He was well liked in the Arab world, it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. He had a strong connection in the Middle East, and this came from his time when he was prime minister and when he was also mayor of Paris. He had a special connection with Lebanon in particular. He was a great friend of the former Prime Minister Hariri, who was assassinated by Syria, and that is something Chirac took very personally. There was no more contact from Chirac with the Bashar regime afterwards, after the assassination of Hariri's father in Beirut.
He met with the then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. He also, of course, met with Yasser Arafat several times. What was his role in the conflict in the Middle East, in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians?
Well, probably he wanted to have a two-state solution, exactly in the perspective of the Oslo Agreement of 1993. Sometimes it was not well understood in Israel, even if Chirac was far from being anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic. He was also a great friend of the Jewish community. I just listened to what you said about the Veldiv, and that was something which has been assessed as a very, very important decision by the French Jewish community, but also by a lot of people in Israel.
Because he famously called for Israel to hand back the Golan Heights to Syria, didn't he? It was something of a thorn in the side of the Sharon government.
Absolutely, but again, he wanted to have a solution, and what he expected is an Israel able to negotiate with the Arab neighbors, and as we know, this is something which did not really happen. So probably it was for him a disappointment, the situation of the Arab-Israeli relation.
Now, what about his relationship to the former colonial countries, the former colonies in Africa? Because Emmanuel Macron, of course, when he visits Africa, he's very clear. He says, France does not have anything to do with African nations. Now they are independent states. But Chirac had a different relationship with Africa, didn't he?
This is a topic on which Chirac was old-fashioned to a certain extent. He really much believed in having good relations with the heads of government and presidents of Africa, whatever their contribution to democracy, etc. This is the old Gaullist legacy. It's under Chirac that the advisor Jacques Chirac, who used to work with Pompidou before, and who was a bit the symbol of the France-Afrique, as we said in French, came back. Chirac asked him to come back. On this question, he was, how can I say that, very realist in the sense that we have to defend the interests of France in Western Africa, whatever the political situation in the different countries. So it's a difference, of course, with the other presidents who who follow, who were much more sensitive to the question of not appearing too much neo-colonial, right? But for Chirac, that was not an issue.
Christian Lequesne, thank you very much indeed, Christian Lequesne. There, the foreign policy of Jacques Chirac is one of the books he's written.